Good evening, everybody. Welcome to Tax Talk Tuesday. It's March 5th, 2024. Oh my gosh, there's less than 45 days left until April 15th. Things are humming along. My name is Mike Rudy. I'm a CPA and partner at Guyer and Associates CPAs in Baker City and LeGrand. We have offices in both places. And every week we get together, talk a little bit about taxes and things that are happening. We usually start out the show with just some quick tax season observations. Things are really humming along right now. Typically in tax preparation business, these are the heaviest weeks of when people get their documents and things turned in. And so, man, if you haven't got your stuff in, hurry. Really what's been happening the last few years, and it's gotten better this year, I think, across the board, just listening to other preparers and other firms. Uh, in the past few years, things were coming in so late. In fact, last year, I think we had a ton of stuff come in uh, the first week of March, second week of March, when previously we've been getting that stuff in mid-February. So what happened last few years is you get your stuff in March 1st, and we don't know if we can get the taxes turned around in time for April 15th. I think that has gotten much better, not just for my firm, but for firms across the board. It seems to be much smoother year. A lot of that is that there hasn't been a whole lot of changes in the tax code or weird wrinkles this year. So it's going pretty good. So if you don't have your tax stuff in now, I would recommend getting it. If you're waiting for the tax relief for Americans, Families, and Workers Act of 24, there has been literally no movement, and very, very little is being said about it, which is kind of scary. And Congress, they get distracted easily by things that come up, and so this came out in January, and it passed the House of Representatives very nicely, went to the Senate, and the Senate has just sat on it. And even though a lot of the word we've been getting is that it still is likely to pass, maybe, but we're looking at mid-March if it does, or even later. The problem with that is there's some retroactive things back to 23, including the refundability of child tax credit and bonus depreciation for self-employed people that would really kind of make a difference. So, but really have not heard anything, which is not typical and typical all at the same time. So you never know what Congress is going to do. We will update if we hear anything. We will post on the page here and then talk about it next Tuesday. So, all right. So last week we had a great show about why do I owe tax. I mean, we frequently see people that owe tax, and went down some of the top reasons of why people owe tax. The number one reason is your withholdings. Your withholdings, if your withholdings aren't high enough, that is the number one determinant of whether you get a refund or you pay. Okay, same with paying estimated tax. You don't pay enough estimated tax. We didn't really talk about that last week, but that's in line with the withholding. So had a lot of feedback, and it was good feedback, and people, for whatever reason, they just don't connect the two in a lot of cases, and that's going to lead into this week's topic, all about refunds, because a lot of the same things we discussed last week on why I owe tax really plays into refunds and how much you get. Okay, so we're just going to go right into it. How do refunds work? How is it determined in the tax prep of what I'm going to get back? And it's very scientific, to be honest with you. I mean, there's different nuances and things like that. But if you look at the front and page 2, so page 1 and page 2 of your Form 1040, that gives you really almost the mathematical equation of how they figure how much you owe or how much you're getting back. Okay. And so I'm going to go through it just real quickly. I'm not going to go into super big detail. If you do have specific questions, shoot me a message and I'll help you. But really, most of the stuff is uh, going to be explained by just pulling out your 1040, going down line one through the end, and seeing how it all kind of fits together. So what we start off with the Form 1040 and with tax prep, everything else was we look at the income. And so your gross income is your wages, interest, dividends, retirement, Social Security, actually taxable Social Security. I should have put in there because not all Social Security is taxable. Some gets taxed at 85%, some at 50%, some less, some zero. Depends on your income. And we have plans to do a show specifically on Social Security and retirement issues probably after tax season, but it's super important. And the number of clients that have that situation going on, I think it's worth spending more than just 15-20 minutes on just that. So okay, so you have your gross income, and then you have minus your adjustments to income. So adjustments to income are like student loan interest, $300 for educator expenses, which if you're a teacher or an educator, it pales in comparison to what you actually spend just to keep your classroom going. And so I don't know how they settle on it. Was 250 for years, and they bumped up to 300, still completely inadequate. And so, but you do get an adjustment to income based on educator expenses. Self-employed health insurance and retirement are two other big ones, and there's more in there, but those are the big ones that we normally see all the time. So you get done with gross income minus the adjustments, get you your adjusted gross income, your AGI, very big number as far as importance in finance world, getting loans, things like that. They love to look at your AGI because that's really tells you the truth about how things are going. Now, to me, gross income is more important than adjusted gross income, but whatever. So your adjusted gross income get you to that point where the next step comes in, which is your itemized or standard deductions. So just gross income, then you have your itemized and standard deductions. And so, in the last few years, the standard deduction has just gone sky high. And so itemized deductions have not been very fruitful on the federal side for sure. But keep track because on the state side, especially in Oregon, I mean, the Oregon standard deduction is so low that you generally get a really good benefit from itemized deductions. So keeping track. Okay. So your itemized deductions include medical expenses, and it's medical expenses over 7.5% of your adjusted gross income. So to get the first dollar of itemized deduction, your medical expenses have to exceed that 7.5% threshold, and then it'll display. So a lot of people cannot get over that threshold. It's not very common that they do unless their income's lower. You have your state and local taxes, which property tax and your state income tax. And what I didn't put in there is that it's capped on the federal side at $10,000. So there's a state and local tax. The SALT cap, okay, is what they call it. So it's been really a political hot potato in the last few years. It was passed in I think going back to 2016, which I think is when the standard deduction went up. But it was kind of a trade off. It closed some loopholes. High earning individuals who have a ton of real high property tax, estate income tax. They don't like it. I don't blame them either because you'd think that if you're already that's tax you're paying to somewhere else, and now you're not going to be able to collect it on the federal side. So, anyways, that is one of the things on that act that is stalled in the Senate that they're talking about is the repealing of the SALT cap. Don't know if it's going to happen or not. I doubt it does. But then we go into mortgage interest, and there's some special rules. I'm not going to go into real detail on that, but you have your first mortgage, and if you have a second or a HELOC that is used for your primary residence improvement, then you can deduct that interest also up to $1 million. There's some caps there. I'm not going to go into that right now because we rarely see it, especially in this area. And then your charitable deductions. I will tell you, sometimes charitable deductions are limited, but for this conversation, we're not going to worry about it because we're just talking about how we get to the refund and the tax due. So, anyway, so you look at your itemized deductions, total them up, and then you compare it against your standard deduction. Your standard deduction for 2023 is $27,700 for married filing jointly. It's $20,800 for head of household, and $13,850 for single or married filing separately. And so if your itemized deductions are higher than your standard deduction, you take the itemized deduction total. If they're below the standard deduction, then it's a standard deduction. So at that point, after you get done subtracting that from your adjusted gross income, you get the real big number, which is the taxable income. That determines your tax liability. So the taxable income multiplied by the tax rate. Now, there's all kinds of stuff in there. Capital gains rates are different from regular income tax rates. So there are some nuances. It's not just a straight, I'm in the 24% or 22% tax bracket. My taxable income is this. I multiply it by that. It's a tiered system. And so the first X number of dollars is taxed at this rate, and so on. And then capital gain rates factor in there for capital gains. So especially in our software, it's great because you can see what your marginal tax rate is, which is the tax rate that your income says you're in, like a 22% or a 24 or a 12. And then you have an effective tax rate, which is the actual what you're paying in tax compared to your taxable income. And so usually your effective tax rate is going to be lower than your marginal tax rate, with some exceptions, including self-employment tax, which we'll get into in a minute. So you have your taxable income determines your tax liability, okay? And then you take and you subtract non-refundable credits, and the non-refundable credits are good until it reaches zero. So if you have enough non-refundable tax credits that takes you to zero tax liability, you can't deduct any more non-refundable credits, even if there are more available. Okay, your non-refundable tax credits are like the adoption tax credit. Another one that is very frequent out there is a foreign tax credit. So you might have investments, mutual funds, that have dividends with foreign investments, and you pay through the investments that they pay foreign tax, and you get a credit for that, but it's not refundable. So the other couple big ones are the residential energy credit, and then the biggest one is the credit for other dependents. So if you have kids or relatives over the age of 17 and they are your dependents, it is a $500 non-refundable credit per person on that are your dependents. And so I'm not going to talk about how they become dependents. We can do that another time because it's probably worth talking. There's all kinds of situations in there, including students, even if they're not living at home, things like that. But generally, you have to provide more than 50% of their living expenses or support in the year to claim them as a dependent. And there's rules, whether they're relatives, not relatives, if they live with you, if they don't live with you, those all go into it. But that's a later class. So we have the non-refundable tax credits that get deducted from the tax liability. And then we add the self-employment tax. So if you turn a profit in a business, you're going to pay 15.3% on that profit. And so it is added after the non-refundable credits, because the non-refundable credits do not reduce the self-employment tax. Okay. So it's going to be kind of separately stated in there. The other one I'm going to talk about in a minute, but the advanced premium tax credit also can be an add back if you have a health insurance policy through the exchange, what they called Obamacare, and you are receiving premium tax credits advanced to reduce your premiums, and you make more than is projected, you could owe some of that advanced premium tax credit back. So it also works the other way, which we'll get into in a second. Okay, so you have your self-employment tax. If you're self-employed, you have self-employment tax from a profit. And then from there, you subtract the refundable tax credits. Okay. And so the refundable tax credits are earned income credit, additional child tax credit, and your premium tax credit. So we talked about premium tax credit. We didn't hit child tax credit up above because it is a hybrid credit. So the child tax credit is $2,000 per child under 17 years old. Okay. And we talked about it last week. There's cases where, just like it happened in my family in 23, my son turned 17, right? So it went from a $2,000 tax credit to a $500 other dependent credit, right? Well, the $2,000 isn't all refundable. And that's part of what we're talking about with that act that's stalled in the Senate. $1,600 of that $2,000 is refundable. The other is non-refundable. Okay. So, and again, the premium tax credit is the other one where it could go either way. You could have to pay additional, pay some back, or you could get more back. And then there's the earned income credit. So the earned income credit is for lower income individuals. It is based on your income and then the number of kids that you have in the house. There's a big calculation on it. We may do a class on that when we go into more kid-related topics, because there's a ton of kid-related topics, including educational benefits and things like that, which I didn't throw in there too. But the educational credits partially are non-refundable and partially refundable. So like the American Opportunity Credit or Lifetime Learning Credit. So we have your refundable credits. You got tax liability, non-refundable tax credits, self-employment tax add, and then you have your refundable tax credits, which you can take below zero tax liability. Okay. And then we get to the most important thing of all. It's your income tax withholdings. Remember from last time, not last week, it was 2 weeks ago. Sorry, we had influenza A run through the house. That's why we skipped a week. But the number one determinant of whether you owe or you're getting a refund is your income tax withholdings. If you have enough withheld to cover your tax liability or more than your tax liability, you're going to get a refund back. If you don't have enough, you're going to owe. It's really that kind of simple. And so normally, like I said in the other class, that is when we see somebody owe tax, it's generally because they are under withheld on their wages. Either that, or we had a life event like their kid turned 17 and they no longer qualify for the $2,000 credit or whatever. So it's very important if you owe or have been owing over the years. It's important to get your withholdings done, or same thing with estimated tax payments. If you need to make estimated tax payments, you make sure they're adequate enough to hit your tax liability, or you're going to owe more. Same deal with getting it back. The more that you have withheld and the more credits you have, the more you're going to get back. Okay. So, there's one thing I know most preparers run into a lot, and it's not our favorite discussion with clients. I call it comparative refunds. And so we will get clients in and they say, hey, my friend has the same job, we have the same number of kids, we make about the same money, but he gets back like $4,000 more than I get back in tax refund. And what's going on? And so generally what we walk through is this is how it works. If your buddy is getting back that much more, it's either because he has a completely different income situation than you do, even though you guys may have the same job, but the rest of his family, his wife might not work or whatever, or he's got more tax credits, or he has a bunch more withholdings, which is usually what it is. It's usually because they have more withholdings and they get more back. There's no secret deal. You don't have people in similar situations, one getting huge tax benefits and others don't, unless they have an income situation or a tax credit situation that makes those refunds bigger. Okay. So, just I'll just give you a heads up on that if I won't do it, but some taxpayers they'll roll their eyes when they hear that from a client. But please, understand, learn of how this is figured, and then if you have that conversation with your friend, then you might ask him, well, then let's compare. I wouldn't, but you never know. So don't have refund envy unless you really understand the true situation between the two parties talking. So um, I, on top of that, a lot of people don't think refunds are that great. And when you really look at it in this light, the reason for the big refunds is because you're over withheld, right? So you essentially are sending money to the government, uh, interest free. They hold it through the year, and then you may get back or you may owe additional, right? So um, refunds aren't bad. I mean, they're not inherently bad. Some people love to do that. They'd rather have a big refund in there than the potential of owing tax. I mean, there's a fear there for some people. I get it. I don't like owing tax either. I hate owing tax, but um, just understand of what is happening when you get that money back. That's your money usually that you're getting back. Not every situation is the same. Like I said, there may be refundable tax credits. You don't have any tax liability, but you got a refund from your child tax credit. So nobody's the same. I mean, nobody. I have not seen one or two clients with the same tax situation ever. It's always going to be different, depending on how they are withheld and how much they make and their life situation. So, if you're more comfortable with getting a refund back and don't care about the government holding your money interest free, that's fine. It's whatever gives you peace of mind. If you're on the other side where hey, I'd rather not have the government holding my money that long, what can I do about it? That's when you adjust your withholdings. And so go to your HR department or talk to your pension or IRA provider and say, hey, I want to reduce my withholdings, and they will give you a W-4 form to fill out. And it's not like the new ones are terrible. I don't like them. I don't know anybody that really likes them, but they're different. Before you could say, hey, I'm married filing jointly with two, two allowances, which like depend me and my wife or whatever. Now it's not like that anymore. And basically it makes you figure out if you want less withheld, you can put on there, the child tax credit figured in, and then it will back off how much is withheld. But if you just give a blank one in there, I firmly believe it's supposed to withhold at whatever the maximum is without additional withholdings. You can also go in and request additional withholdings in each paycheck or whatever period. Most people just do it per paycheck or per month and add in there. So, uh, but yeah, I'm hoping everybody gets really nice refunds. I know um, it's changed in the last, especially since COVID to now. There's been a lot of changes. A lot of that has to do with the child tax credit and how they've monkeyed around with that and changed it over the last uh, really 4 years. But it's back to where the way it was pre-COVID now. And so what you're seeing, unless they change it through legislation, you're going to see the same situation going forward. So anyways, that's really all I have for tonight. Please send me questions, observations, how your tax season is going, how your prep is going. Love to hear from people. And next week we'll be back on. I really don't have a topic picked out yet. So if you have something you really want to go over, shoot me a message and I'll talk about it. So um, till then, enjoy, have a great week, and I will talk to you next week.